Star Trek Voyager, to boldly go where no one has gone before and spend the rest of the series trying to get back home. Before we get started, hit that like button and subscribe and grab your coffee as we embark on a cosmic journey and delve into Voyager's unique moral landscape that either aligns with or contradicts Christianity. Pulled from the far side of the galaxy where the Federation is 75 years away at maximum warp speed, the Starship fleet or the crew must cooperate with Maquis rebels to find a way home. Star Trek Voyager originally aired from 1995 to 2001, 172 episodes, 6 episodes fewer than NTG. The pilot episode aired after the last season of NTG and simultaneously with Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I've got a little graphic here to show how the episodes or the series all interacted with each other according to Federation timeline, not according to our calendar and the release dates and everything. And so the different colors show the different series. You have on the far left, you've got Enterprise coming in with the earlier episodes, sort of like the prequel. Then you've got the yellow, only 3 episodes for the original series, which kicked everything off. The blue, 3 seasons, not 3 episodes. Yeah, there was only 3 episodes.
I'm about to say that's one short series.
Yes. And then you have Next Generation with the blue 7 and 7. So Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager all had 7 seasons, and they overlapped with each other. You got Deep Space Nine kicking in on season 6 of Next Generation, and then Voyager running simultaneously with Deep Space Nine after season 3. And so you can see how they were all, and I remember when these came out, it was like boom, boom, boom. And you're thinking, man, what's going to be next? Because the Next Generation is starting to taper off. You can see things are closing down. They're going to be going into movies, and you're thinking, okay, well, that was fun while it lasted. And then you have Deep Space Nine to come in afterwards. You're not too sure about it. I don't know. They're all sitting on this space station. Who knows what this is different. But it actually ended up turning out pretty well. And then once Next Generation kicked out, you had Voyager come in. And that was, I was going to talk about this later. I'll kick it in right now. I think this is one of the positives of this story or this series is that you've got both Deep Space Nine, which is sedentary, and you have Voyager, which is moving as fast as they can. So the pilot episode named Voyager, named Caretaker, the Voyager spacecraft even launched from the Deep Space Nine station, tying the 2 series together. So you can purchase the DVDs through Paramount Studios or stream them on Paramount Plus or Apple TV or a couple other streaming services. Would you recommend this for people, viewers, all audiences, anybody, aunts, uncles, other aliens, Ferengi, anybody?
Again, you have to be discerning with this. I'd say that it's not for necessarily the youngest audience that's out there, but at a certain break point, I'd say probably PG-13 level. Yeah, sure, that this is a pretty decent one. There isn't really anything that stands out as far as like any sort of in extreme levels of sexual innuendos, or I mean, it's still sci-fi, so there's still sci-fi violence going on. So keep those in mind, I guess. But other than that, that's about it.
So as far as the crew and the show goes and the way that everything was put together, would you find this an entertaining series, something fun to watch, something you enjoy, something you look forward to seeing? Would this be worth my time to like stream or get anything?
I'd say if you haven't ever watched it before, I'd say it is. I think the rewatchability is definitely drops for me just because of some of the factors we'll talk about later on in this.
Okay,
review.
does that compare then for you to like Deep Space Nine and Next
I'd say Deep
Generation?
Space Nine is better in that regard, is more character driven. I think by nature of it just being stationary. So it was much more character driven than Voyager was. Voyager was much more event driven.
Okay, and we'll get into some of the details of the pros and cons on both of them in a bit here too. But yeah, I would agree with you in terms of the rating and who is what audience this was basically made for. This is back. This was made back when TV censorship was more of a thing than what you have now with streaming services. Being a network broadcast show, there's sexually suggestive scenes, but no nudity or sex like that. 7 and 9. No profanity. Mild sci-fi violence and action. No, next to no gore, I'd say, and maybe limited alcohol and drug use. So it's probably about as clean as you can get for definitely early teenage. You draw the line where you want on that, but it's pretty. I think the only thing that's going to be tougher for younger viewers is maybe some of the scary scenes. That's it, and it's not like a horror flick or anything like that. But some of it can be pretty intense, which for us adults, we like that kind of stuff. We like the intense stuff. We don't want to see Bambi. We want to see something that's got a little bit more gripping on it.
Bambi was pretty.
It was
pretty intense for kids, man.
Yeah,
Bambi's mom gets shot.
Yeah, it does. I know.
He dies.
It's terrible. Don't put spoilers, man. So not only that,
it's off screen.
Not only that,
you don't see it.
Bambi runs around the whole movie nude. So no clothes, completely naked. Yeah, I don't know if that's for kids. We'll take that off the list. But this Star Trek Voyager is a series filled with sci-fi outer space adventure in the lonely reaches of an unexplored section of our galaxy. But what are the hidden Christian themes and moral lessons to this story? How far are you willing to go to bend the rules to reach your goal? Before we get into that, we're going to be heading into spoiler territory to answer that question. So you may want to postpone, watch the entire series and come back, but it's been out for a while, so there you have it. I want to dip into a little bit of trivia first before we go in. There's so much material in here. It's 7 seasons. Let's just pull out some fun stuff here. When auditioning for the part of the Doctor, the holographic Doctor, Robert Picardo was asked to say the line, "Somebody forgot to turn off my program." He did so. And then ad-libbed, "I'm a doctor, not a light bulb." That got him the part. So then you have, and here's the Doctor, just for reference sake. So then you have these guys. The Kazon were the arch enemy tribe from the first 2 seasons. They were modeled after Los Angeles street gangs, but were so poorly received by viewers who regarded them as Klingon wannabes with a bad hair day. They were written out of the series after the early part of season 3 and were only mentioned in an episode being unworthy of assimilation by the Borg. Man, that is a real insult.
Holy cow.
We
don't even want you.
I want that on my tombstone. Unworthy of assimilation by the Borg. That's why here lies John Newton. So that was that one. And then there was quite a few actresses and even some actors that they were going through for the position of Captain Janeway, and a couple dozen. I mean, they were just grinding through who is the best person. Who's the best person? We're going to put a female. We want to have a female captain here, but we want to make sure this really good fit. And so one of the ones that they considered was this woman, Catherine Snell. Now, who, if you recognize her in this picture, you are really probably as old as I am. And she had previously starred in Space 1999, which came out in 1975. That's a British television series, which ironically had a similar theme or premise about people in space, group of individuals flung away from the Earth with no quick way back home. Dun, dun, dun. So that was pretty interesting. That was on the moon. It was really campy. I really want to do a review on Space 1999 because when I was a kid, I loved the spaceship, the little eagle one. So yeah, we'll probably do that one time. So, but it was really cheesy. Some of these
on
ones.
the docket. Yeah, gotta sit down and actually watch it again. Refresh your memory.
I know. I've seen some episodes recently. And I thought, how
did I watch this without?
This is so bad. But you know what? For its time, it's good. It's good. So the last thing I want to do is the last point of trivia is Jerry Ryan, who played 7 and 9. She hated her cat suits so much that after the end of the series,
cat suit,
she burned it.
Oh. Well,
this is a picture of her. No, it's not. Okay. But yeah, she did burn her. That was the skin tight suit they had for her.
Oh, I got you.
I wasn't going to show. Yeah, I was about to. This is her cat suit. This is her wearing her cat suit and walking across. This is it, guys. Lust after it. No, but that was
like censorship on that one.
Yeah, it's hot, man. It's really hot.
That's my hot suit.
Now, instead of looking at the most popular series, like what we did with Star Trek Next Generation, we're going to focus on themes and dedicate future live streams to a few choice episodes. I've got a couple picked out, and I'm going to ask if you're joining me. Then I'm going to ask you maybe if you can pick out a couple of them too. But
sure.
All right. So, what we liked? Is there anything on here that stood out that you really liked in this series?
What I really liked in the series, I liked the concept. I thought it was an interesting change of pace from what typically Star Trek has done in the past, which was following a single ship around as they went out on adventures, came back, went out on adventures, came back, so forth.
Instead, just bouncing around because they were like, doing whatever. Maybe they got it, or they're supposed to be explorers, right?
Yeah, but exploring, but
this is different.
In this case, they're out there, lost in space, need to get back home. So the concept I thought was very interesting. I don't think they did very good job on it.
Ooh. Okay, so we're talking about what we like right now.
I'm sorry. I just have to tend.
Well, say it like it is. If you're going to have some people that are like, no, I like Voyager. It was the best. I challenge you to a Klingon duel with forks. So I thought one of the better things was they did have to explore some ethical issues here. Being stranded. This is what I talked about earlier off. Being stranded out in the Delta Quadrant. What 75? It's going to take you 75 years to get home. Going the fastest.
Yep.
It's like being late to work, and even if you were to do 90 miles per hour, what would it be? Over 120 kilometers per hour? I don't know. If you were to floor it to try to get it to work, there's no way you're going to get it. They get home 75 years. Tuvok, the Vulcan, would probably be the only one who's still living, right? Cass, don't worry about it. She's dead after a couple weeks. But the series explored some moral and ethical dilemmas, challenges faced by the crews, and some of these decisions. And they showed how they delved into the consequences of the choices. And I'm gonna post some of these choices later when we get into it. Say, hey, how would you handle these things? I'm gonna pull out a couple of episodes and we're gonna take a look at these and say, from a Christian's perspective, what would you do?
How would we deal with this?
How would you handle some of this stuff? Now, one of the other things I thought was good about this, and we looked at the graphic showing how it coincided with Deep Space Nine. The theme of Deep Space Nine, Voyager counterbalanced. Deep Space Nine, they stayed in one place. Aliens and adventurers came came to the space station. In Voyager, they moved as fast as they could to get back home through aliens and adventures. So it was kind of a mirror in their focus or what their goals were. And I thought that was pretty good. Okay, so I want to pull out a couple of these episodes then. There was one, The Year of Hell.
That was interesting because unfortunately a lot of these were episodic. A lot of the episodes were episodic. The Year of Hell, not so much.
Okay, so tell you what I'm going to do. These are innovative episodes. I'll talk about these in a bit. You jumped on this, and I think it's a good idea. Strengths and weaknesses. Before we get into the weaknesses or what we didn't like about this, I'm going to talk about one issue that was kind of back and forth. Is it a strength or is it a weakness? And the Paramount was really trying to push this as a strength, and I think it really came off, at least in a lot of viewers' minds and in my mind, as a weakness. And by the way, they were also launching. This is a flagship product, a flagship series they were launching because they wanted to get a new network out there, the new television network, the UPN. I don't know if do you remember that at all? It was short-lived. It didn't last that long, and I think
obviously
CBS
they didn't launch it very well.
Well, it was a really big thing that they were trying to, and this is before. I mean, the whole idea of video on demand just kiboshed all that whole networking thing before. But they were pushing this out as this was going to be the next best thing, and Voyager, we're going to hit with this because we look at the success of the next generation, and we're going to go with this, and we're finally going to get a female sitting in the captain's seat. We're breaking barriers, the glass ceiling and everything like that. And so that's cool. Go for it. She's going to prove herself. She's going to do all this kind of stuff in there too. But diversity of characters and strong female characters, diversity, inclusion, and equity. This was on the beginning edge of when they really started pushing a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, it didn't work very well then either. It definitely was a weak suit.
Yeah.
Because I would say not so much because of the female captain, but because she's trying to be Kirk. She was trying too hard to be Kirk.
Okay. How was she trying to be Kirk?
The attitude, I'm going to take control of every situation. I'm going to dominate every situation. I'm going to control every aspect instead of allowing her character to have their own spin on it.
Gosh, we need to do a comparison.
Because all the other captains had their own spin on it, brought their own personality to it. Mm-hmm. They're each very different.
Yeah.
She was always felt like a wannabe. Like she always wanted to be.
You're going to have some people that'll strongly disagree with you.
I'm fine with that. I don't care. With all the work I do.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. So this opinion, and I would agree with that too. I kind of, it's just irritating. I think Catherine Janeway, either love or hate her.
Now there's a couple episodes that she did come out on her own as her own character, and I think you were talking about earlier on The Year of Hell. I think that was one of those that she really came out. The actress really came out and was able to give the character their own sort of opinion, their own voice in that. And I think that's why it's one of the stronger episodes.
Yeah.
Because they were able to work that in. And if she would have done that with the character the entire time, I think that it would have been very, very strong. Yeah.
And so you have several female. This is something that's really like, oh, this is so cutting edge. We got a female captain. We have Taurus, who is a female engineer. Oh, a female engineer is something of this. I mean, cutting edge, right? And then you got 7 and 9, a female Borg, Queen. She is like cutting edge here. And then Kess. Who is Kess? So you've got all these females, like we're really breaking barriers. Like just let them be who they are.
If you compare the two between the her name escapes me, the engineer.
Taurus. Yeah.
If you compare between Taurus and Captain Janeway, Taurus, the actress who played her, she had a very interesting character.
Yeah.
She
There's
had
depth there.
and she had let that character be its own thing. She wasn't a wannabe Geordie or a wannabe anything else. She was her own thing. And because of that, I thought she was probably one of the strongest characters in the entire series. And I really did enjoy watching that character development.
Did it now I'm an engineer, so there are more male engineers than female engineers, and I have an opinion on why that is, mainly because people do what they want to do. And I've met some really good female engineers, and for Lieutenant Torres, I thought she did a good job. And like you said, there was a lot of interesting background about her being half Klingon and half human, sort of like Spock, half Vulcan and half human. And they explored some of that, and it was good. And it's not the focus on her being female.
There's a lot of character development from the beginning.
Yeah, because she's Maquis, right?
Yeah, she's Maquis. She's very much against. She was in Starfleet, then she quit, and she's very much against Starfleet, and she's pushing back against them. And eventually, she basically ends up working with Janeway and finds her place, finds her stride, gets married, looks at having kids.
Yeah,
this is a whole entire character change from the beginning into a critical part of the crew with her own voice and her own opinions and her own perspective on this. That was very valuable, which you don't have with Janeway.
No,
there's really no character development with Janeway at all.
And there's interplay with other characters as well, like with Kim. What's his Ensign Kim? I'm trying to remember what his first name is.
I don't remember.
Oh, come on. All right. So anyway,
you look at me like,
and I felt bad because his character really could have gone places, and I think he did have a good. I would have liked to have seen his character brought forward a little bit more, but there's only so much screen time, right? You can only do so much. So Ensign Kim and Lieutenant Torres had a whole back and forth. There was a lot of friction. He called her Maquis, she called him Starfleet, but then they started working things out, and they were real. I think there was a lot of companionship later on in later series, and so especially with his buddy Tom, her marrying him and stuff like that. So there was, like you say, there was not just the individual character development, but there was the integration into the crew, where the captain in this situation would have to be tough, would have to maybe not try to be the likable character that everybody liked in the crew, because you have to crack some skulls to be able to get people home. You got to really push hard.
I think we touched on one of the reasons why I don't think Janeway worked as well was because there wasn't that much character progression with her character development, because she was the hard-hitting captain at the beginning, and she continued to be that the entire time.
Well, I think she softened with Chakotay, and then there almost like a relationship.
No,
relationship developing there.
That relationship, that friendship, there was very interesting.
That was good.
That developed. That was cool.
Yeah,
that was interesting. But again, I just think her character left a lot to be desired.
So this is something that they push forward as to say it is a strength, but I think it was more like fingernails on chalkboard. It just graded people, and we see the beginnings here in the mid 90s and into the early 2000s of a philosophy that it's good that we make things equitable, that it doesn't matter what your ethnic background is, it doesn't matter what your sex is, male or female, it doesn't matter whether everybody can do anything. And they were really pushing that there, and now we see a lot of how ingrained that is in a lot of what's coming out of Hollywood right now. And we talked about that with Sword Art Online, how that's just really killing the creativity in Hollywood, because this ideology has become king. It is conquering storyline, it's conquering everything. I think we saw the beginnings of this in Voyager. You may disagree, please disagree. Give me your opinion. Tell me something different. Tell me I'm wrong and that I need to go take a long walk and consider my life deeply, deep reflection, because I am a hypocrite, a bigot, and misogynist on all the above. What didn't you like?
Well, we already talked about Janeway being a disadvantage, and I would say that was one of the aspects. I'd say more than Janeway pushing her way out of it is the fact that this is so episodic. I think whenever I sat down with my wife and started watching again, this is one of the things that she pointed out, where Deep Space Nine was her favorite Star Trek series. This was by far her least.
Was it because of this reason?
Is because of this reason. Deep Space Nine, she liked it because it was a lot more character driven.
So the premise is they've got to get home. And if you then force that into a box that's episodic, you don't see a progression, because the whole point is to make progress, right?
Yeah. And you don't see that. You don't see the effects. I mean, after the end of most of the episodes, now this does vary with some exceptions. Most of the episodes, the ship's back to the same shape it was at the very beginning of the episode. Nothing in it mattered. My wife pointed out, saying they got red alerts every single episode, yet they don't matter at all, because by the end of it, they're all the same anyway.
See, that just goes to show you what a great engineer Lieutenant Torres is. I mean, she's top notch. If she can get everything back, no spare parts are available in the Delta Quadrant. I mean, she uses
no, you can't go back and get the exact same thing.
No Home Depot out there in the Delta Quadrant. You are stuck. Okay, you can replicate some things, but you're limited, right? So that is a good point. But there's a lot of shows that we could look at, and that even the original Star Trek series, there was a bit of the case. But you could still go to Space Dock and
in those you could say, well, they had opportunity to come back, they had downtime. We're just showing the highlights of the episode, highlights of the exploration. Fine, I can believe that. But the whole point of this one is they don't have access to that. They don't have the downtime. They're constantly moving, constantly trying to get out of this situation, trying to get home as fast as possible, and they don't have it. And
there was no long-term consequences with one episode to the next.
No,
right?
There are a couple that spanned a couple episodes. Overall, their progress was basically the only thing that really marked their progress was them saying, "Oh, look, we're this close to Federation space now." And that was about it.
Okay, so I know this is a common disagreement or common dislike with this series, and I agree. As far as the story going, you're trying to make progress, but you're just like resetting all the time, and you don't really see the progress going. Maybe over seasons, this season versus that season, maybe you do see, and finally at the end, you do see with the Borg and stuff like that, they are making.
Now that's where it gets interesting. Finally, is when they hit that Borg section, because they start integrating Borg technology into their ship. Their ship starts to change. By the time they got to that point, the ship should be a freaking
can't wait to get back to Federation space to show all this off,
And that would have been interesting. That would have been interesting if they're taking different technologies, they're developing as they're going, learning about these different species and how they interacted and how they've developed, and taking some of their technology, some of their culture along with them, and they're coming back. And when they enter into Federation space, it kind of, and everything's taken apart. You kind of have scientific development, you have cultural.
But they did do some of that. They did mention that, at least. I think what the problem is,
did that with the Borg.
Yes, they did
the
that
Borg
with
stuff. They did. That's why I said that was the interesting part.
Yeah.
But they should have been doing that the entire time.
Well, okay. So a little bit of consideration for the writers on this. Their hands were tied. This is still back in the dark ages before streaming. You could not, unless you were to buy the VHS. I don't know if this ever came out in VHS or the pre-recorded. You could not binge watch this stuff. Okay, this was not video on demand. Streaming services allowed for season arcs. They allowed for the progression that we see now, for telling a season would be an entire story that you're telling with chapters for episodes instead of resetting them all in between.
Well, there were plenty of series that had weren't episodic.
Well, let me finish with this thought, if you don't mind, because this really is true. Self-contained, interchangeable episodes were necessary because if you don't have that, if the viewer missed an episode, he or she might feel tempted to stop watching the entire thing. There is no way to catch up on that missed episode. If you missed an episode, good luck. You have to wait for it in reruns, which usually happened at the tail end of the season. So if they had a season that went a certain number of weeks, and then there would be a point for reruns here at the end before they started the new season, you may catch a rerun of that, but you may not. And so they had to be almost like individual pieces that you could digest each individual one by themselves. Okay, so now counter argument.
So I think it would have been better if they would have, and I understand that since you have so many different writers, maybe have a couple of different writer groups working on this, that they need to know what the state of the ship is at the beginning of their episode, and it's got to end the same way at the end so that the next people who get to write, it can all mesh together. And I can see your point where it's like, oh, well, in case you miss one, I don't want the audience to quit. But then that just proves my point in each episode not being that valuable.
So what it is the premise did not work with the restrictions that the authors, the writers had. They had to write it in a way that was episodic because that was the rules of the time. The rules have changed now where you can and even are encouraged to make sure you do have entire arcs. If they were to do Voyager now, besides all the woke stuff, if they were to do Voyager now, I bet you it would be more like what you're talking about.
Well, again, I think they could have addressed that. And I think it would have been, yes, it would have been unusual for them to do. I think it would have ended up giving this a much more unique spin compared to all the others, which were, a lot of them were episodic in some ways. But even then, Deep Space Nine, a lot of that wasn't episodic.
You got a very good point there.
Deep Space Nine was very, very developed as far as the characters go. And if you missed an episode, it mattered.
I don't know so much about that, but I would say that there were definitely season arcs where there were some episodes where it didn't matter where it fit in. Maybe a Goldacott thing comes up or a Garrick or something like that comes in, and it can just, it could fit in this season or possibly even the previous season. But I would say definitely you do see, and which is really interesting because they're sedentary. They don't need to show progression necessarily.
Yes. And I think that was one of the strengths with that series, was showing that progression as they were going, compared to the episodic stuff that we've already watched previously. And I think, again, Voyager could have definitely benefited from that. Now, again, you have the issue with multiple writers needing to know what the state of the ship is. Well, again, you could do that by storyboarding, where each episode you give it to them, say, okay, this is how this is what the ship is going to look like at the end of this episode. Here's the beginning state of the ship. Yep. Here's the end state of the ship.
Yep.
Get us from point A to point B. Here you go.
Right.
This is your episode. And then the next people know that that is the end of that episode, and that's what the state's going to be, and go from there.
I would carry it out with just a couple more things. I would say, so there's the state of the ship. You know what that is from episode to episode, kind of tweaking a little worse, and maybe you got some new technology that advanced, got a new muffler or something. So you have that going, but you would also say, hey, here is this other technology that's not necessarily on the ship, but it allows them to go into stealth mode individually. They got stealth suits or something, that they get from the Kazon. Okay, whatever, that's there. And then also character development. So 3 things, ship, individual pieces of technology, and character arc, overall character. And they did that with Kess, right?
Yeah. And I think that if they would have done that for the entire ship and all that aspect of it, I think they would have added quite a bit of intrigue to it. And I think it could have driven a lot of the stories more than how it was, where you go from emergency to emergency. Okay, let's say one of the nacelles no longer works. Now you're not able to go as fast. Well, because you're no longer go as fast, now you're more vulnerable to slower moving ships that maybe don't have the same level of technology, but they're willing to try to raid you to get your technology.
Boy, that would be tense.
So now you're trying to get it so that you can get back up there and you get your cell to work, and maybe you need to make some deals with some local civilizations to get the technology or the resources you need to build it up. And maybe that goes for maybe an episode, maybe 2 episodes, or even 3 episodes until you're back up and going again at full speed. And then maybe your nacelle looks like a different color than the other one, just as like to make it evident that there has been changes.
Oh.
I think that would have been powerful.
Okay, so I think you're right. Let's look now at innovative episodes. We're going to take a look at 3 episodes, and this is almost worthy of live streams by themselves. And I think in the future, I really do want to do a few episodes on each of these Star Trek series and others where we look just at particular episodes. But the first one that I want to bring up is the Year of Hell. You have the idea is this: Voyager comes across a Kremen. It's a different species. Kremen time ship that is wiping out whole species from existence to change the existing timeline. I think this is probably outstanding. This may have been my favorite episode of the entire series. You got this guy.
And then isn't this multiple episodes?
I don't think 2. I believe there's 2, maybe 3.
Yeah, and I think this was one of the more powerful ones because, again, they were exploring an arc for multiple episodes, and that gave them more time to dive into this and explore this concept. And I thought it was a very powerful one.
Yeah, and so this guy, this Kremen captain, and I'm not going to go into the details because we can look at this later on a different, a completely dedicated live stream for this, but it was interesting. There were some deep concepts. They thought, oh man, there's real conflict here. And again, are you breaking the rules to work with this? And we'll talk about breaking rules here in a bit. Another one that came up was the blink of an eye. This is the one where you had this now I don't see how this works, in terms of physics. But the rotation of this planet was extremely fast. And somehow that made their time accelerated. Now, if you're in an accelerated frame of reference, your time actually slows down compared to everyone else. So I think it's kind of be backwards. If you think otherwise, please in the comments say I'm wrong.
This one was, again, interesting because you have a lot of character. You basically get to see a character go from youth to old age. And not only that, but you're able to see the civilization.
Right.
Develop.
From Stone Age to space travel themselves.
And that was interesting. I would have liked to have seen that explored more because of the interaction between the two and how Voyager itself had helped or hindered, in some ways, the development of this civilization.
So let me real quickly go through and say what the premise was. Voyager becomes trapped in orbit of a planet where time passes rapidly, days within seconds, and enters the mythos of this indigenous people. The Voyager, they see the spaceship up there in the sky, and because it's there, that actually impacts their society. But you're right. If they were to extrapolate this more, these people are very grateful for Voyager as a part of their culture for generations and eons. They're still going forward in time. Their technology is increasing at such an accelerated rate. Voyager leaves the star system, flies, 500 light years away, and all of a sudden these guys come up behind him and says, "We want to thank you so much for helping us earlier. I can't believe you were actually here on the Voyager. Can we get you home? It'll take you like 3 minutes." Something like that.
Yeah, because the rate of development that we're seeing in this civilization is to such a huge amount, such an extreme amount, that, they would have had the ability to transwarp or whatever it is pretty early on.
Yeah.
I mean, within, hours of them leaving, they should have been at that point of development. And why isn't the species like taking over the universe at this point?
Yeah. Well, a lot of these things is like they just made an Uber species, and they probably
Uber species out the wazoo.
Yeah, they joined Voyager later and say, Q's a dork. He's pitiful. He's an amoeba compared to us. And so, go on from there. Another one that I want to point out, and this is it had some intriguing ideas with it. Scorpion, where Voyager, about to enter Borg space, finds a threat so devastating that even the Borg cannot deal with species 8472. And so they enlist the help of the Borg and this nice looking lady who ends up burning her cat suit. And we say goodbye to this nice lady because she's replaced by the Cyclops. And so that was an interesting series interesting. I think it was another two-parter.
Well, they had them a couple times come back, that species, and it's very interesting. It's an intriguing idea to explore. But again, they didn't really flush them out too much.
And one thing I found that was very disappointing with it is that, and this is something that also happened in Stargate, eventually the bad guy becomes defanged, is neutered, is so watered down and stuff. Not just that you defeat the boss and go on to the next level, they just becomes a bit of a wimp.
They're not the threat they once were. They're just
for
no reason other than just they became inconvenient.
Yeah. Now you see that with the Gould, but there's reasons behind that, and it kind of makes sense. But with this species that they run into, they were like in fluidic space, which I thought was a really cool concept. They were so far advanced and kicking butt left and right. The Borg were hiding in corners because of these guys. All of a sudden, then they have a couple episodes later where like, oh yeah, we're friends, kind of meet us. We're just like anybody else.
Yeah, it's like, what?
Where did that come from?
What? No, you guys were cool.
Yeah.
now you're puppy dogs.
Yeah, you're like everybody else, and
you're wusses.
And it's I don't know if it's just the idea of kumbaya, our species, we're all happy together, whatever. But that just kind of, I think it lost its punch. So, Christian themes. We're going to talk about some of the themes here, and we're not going to look at. I want to say right off the bat that I don't want to so much delve into the regular things that we see in most of these shows, like self-sacrifice and selflessness, the importance of relationships, although that is important here too, a strong moral compass, which again is important here, but it's important in a lot of other ones, and even skipping over redemption and forgiveness, because we could take a close look at the whole concept of seven of nine. Might do a live stream in itself, but let's just put that aside. What other, unless that's really what you want to talk about, that was the whole thing I was going to say. That's the whole thing. Yeah. What other Christian themes would you pull out here on this one?
I would say the desire to be home, the desire to belong, is something you could pull out, and that's something that's a driving force within the entire series, is the desire to get home, to go home. Again, you still have the concept of the Federation being like this ideal sort of utopia concept, which again, we've already explored beforehand. Doesn't really work.
No.
Unless you basically have Christianity as its core.
Yeah.
Because without that, you don't have
without God, without the redemption of God, you still have human nature.
Yeah. And human nature is either inherently corrupt or inherently perfect. I think throughout history, we have unfortunately thoroughly proven that we are of the corrupt nature.
Initially good, but kind of gone sour, bad.
I'm talking about current status of humanity, not previous status.
You're right. Not as creative. But
so, and we see that again throughout here. I think that the struggles could have been pulled out better as far as where the balance is on morality, where the moral compass is actually coming from. I think they were very loosey-goosey with that. Sometimes things were moral, sometimes things were not moral. It was more of convenience for the writers.
Well, they were also okay. So they're desperate. They're stuck, and this is where the real conundrum comes. And I mentioned this right off in the beginning. You are in a desperate situation. How far will you go to bend the rules to get to your goal?
I think that would have been an interesting the theme throughout the entire thing. It really wasn't that big.
Well, they did deal with that quite a bit on different cases.
On a couple of cases, you had the interaction with the other starship, other Federation starship at the very beginning, where it was a question of morality and how they handled it.
I'll go over that in a minute, but yes.
And I think that was well handled. It was an interesting concept to be at. I would have liked to have seen those come up more often. But then again, you have later on, you have the one of the species has an ability to teleport long distances, and they basically steal the technology and use it. Granted, Janeway's not behind that, but they do it anyway.
Well, desperate times.
And that's an interesting concept. You deal with that morality, okay? Why is their moral being moral? I mean, Janeway keeps going back to, this is our Prime Directive, and this is how we should interact with everything. And okay, so people 70 years plus away at maximum speed are dictating how we interact and how we live.
Oh, why? Yeah. So
why? No one would know. And if you don't enter into the records, there may be no evidence of this ever occurring if you skirted the lines or even broke some of the aforementioned Prime directives.
So there's a couple levels of morality on here. One is basic morality, whatever and this is the point, whatever you base that on. Okay. The only real common basis of morality that they had was what the Federation's rules were, like the Prime Directive and other things. But since they're out of the jurisdiction, basically, they don't have any contact with Starfleet directly. And like you said, other than a record being made, who cares, right? I mean, they're out of their jurisdiction. They're way out in the hinterlands. So let's take a look at a few of these episodes here. You have the alliance with the Borg.
Yep.
Right? They made a deal with the devil, basically, to be able to. This is species 4729, whatever. That's one species, that weird looking creature was. In order to defeat that species, they made alliance with the Borg. Made a deal with the devil. Would that be okay? That's a good question. Are there times when you can lock arms with somebody that you're opposed to on ethical or moral grounds or whatever to get the job done?
That's a good question. I guess the question is, what is it? What are you enabling? The question with them is, was the species actually a threat to them directly? Was it a threat to the rest of it, or were they just a threat to the Borg that were over there trying to take them over? And they're like, we don't really want to be assimilated. In that case, they're kind of the same as Voyager, and I don't remember exactly what the dynamics were.
Yeah.
I mean, if they were an active threat to the entire other species as well, then I could see there being, okay, we need to join forces in order to remove this threat, and then we can deal with the issues among us later. Fine. I think it's very dangerous once you make those alliances, though. Definitely, if there's something you've on a moral level.
Yeah. So you can easily cross a line with something else. Let's say the Borg are missing a certain technology that would help them assimilate more species, and Catherine Janeway says, all right, well, we need to get through this. So, yeah, we'll give you that technology just so that we can get out of this situation. That would be wrong.
Well, not only that, if they help push these guys back and the Borg continue to simulate other species, which would not have happened if you did not assist. Okay, you're partially responsible for that.
But what if this other species is worse than the Borg?
That's the question. What if this other species is worse than the Borg? They are coming through. They are just as a bigger threat than the Borg are. Then I could see trying to take the lesser of two evils to do it, but I still have an issue with one starship being enough to turn the tide of an entire war like that.
Okay.
Definitely one that's so inferior in technology to both the Borg and this other species.
So this might be worth doing a live stream by itself. I will end with this one part and say, in terms of Christian ethics, Jesus himself was faced with this. He was faced with a shortcut. The devil gave him, said, listen, these kingdoms are following me. You're here to basically rescue these people, to have them follow you again. They're following me. You have to go through the cross for this. You have to die a terrible, painful death. You know what? Let's just skip to that. Worship me, and I'll get all these people to follow you. We're good. And he said no. And so there was a compromise that could not be brokered. And yeah, this is a tough call with the alliance with the Borg. So utilizing Borg technology, another compromise that was made.
I'd say we have a precedence in history for us doing this.
Mm-hmm.
The question of, is it ethical? Is it moral? Obviously, the Borg used immoral means to obtain this technology, but it has been obtained. We're not endorsing the obtaining of it or the means of getting it, but we might as well use it, because if not, then the species died for no purpose.
Yeah. So you have a clear example would be like the Nazi Germany doing experimentation on human limits of like oxygen deprivation and other things like that. That data, some of it was useful, a lot of it wasn't, but that data then could be used later and has been used later. Is it morally or ethically wrong to use that information? I would say no, but because it is information. You don't want to take it so it's encouraging other people to do this in the future. I don't think you're actually
no. You need to make a strong stance saying, and I think they did, obviously, saying that a simulation is bad, because we don't want it either.
Right.
But yeah, if the bad's already been done, and the only good that can come out of that bad action is to use that technology to further humanity in general, I could see that being, yeah, we can take it and we can use it, but we need to recognize where it came from, and that it is not acceptable to ever do that again.
Yeah. So the other part of that too is I would be concerned from a cybersecurity standpoint. If I plug in their devices, is there something about this device, this new technology, that even though it might make it compatible with my systems, is it going to put my systems at risk because there's something hidden in there that I'm not aware of? Maybe some kind of surveillance communication, maybe it overrides some of our systems in some way, something like that. So that's another way to look at it, that was an issue. So third one is temporal violations. In the year of hell, that two-parter, which I think still stands out as being probably the best, some of the best episodes that came of the whole series. The crew encounters the temporal disturbances that alter the timeline, causing devastating consequences for the Voyager. And Captain Janeway, desperate to undo the damage, violates Star Trek's temporal directives. They actually have a temporal directive. Okay, surprise, surprise. And uses time travel technology to attempt to restore the timeline, even though it puts the crew at greater risks. So this is something that was kind of controversial too. This guy is going through and he's wiping out entire species, entire civilizations, so he can get back to his love. He can restore the original, right? And so she does something kind of similar in setting things right for herself, right?
Mm-hmm.
So wow, that's one to think about.
Yeah, we could break that down later, because there are a lot of nuances. I'd say the primary one is that it was by his own actions that he accidentally erased his beloved.
Yeah, that's tragic. That was a tragic story.
So yeah, that was, he kind of screwed it up himself to begin with. Janeway didn't screw it up herself. She was just trying to fix what someone else was already messing up.
Okay, so and I think that will require its own live stream. We can look into that. The last one I want to take a look at and this is we're looking at Christian ethics applied to Voyager. This would be concerning the Equinox incident. And you brought this up earlier. This is where it's a two-part episode. Captain Janeway discovers that another Starfleet ship, USS Equinox, has been using, and they're also in the Delta Quadrant, they've been using unethical means to survive in the Delta Quadrant, including killing a sentient being for fuel to be able to get there. They have justified, hey, we got to get home by any means necessary. When anybody uses that term, by any means necessary, ethics, morality is out the door, because we're going to steamroll this puppy. And Janeway decides to take a hard stance against the Equinox crew, including fighting against them and everything else, leading to some tense scenes, even with Chakotay in it. So that was another one where there was morality. How far would you go to do
that?
This
is an excellent question. How far? What is too far to go? Again, that would be the morality, what your basis of morality is. What is your foundation for morality? The captain's foundation for morality, and that is, I need to protect my crew. I need to keep them safe. I need to get them home, no matter what the consequences.
Captain
are.
of the Equinox, right?
Captain of the Equinox,
right.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was his basis for his morality. Her basis was, I'm going to stick to the Prime Directive. What we just got here in this situation, we haven't had to deal with these extreme situations that you've had to deal with. Try to scrounge to survive in a much smaller ship, much weaker ship, and a much older ship. So we've got a brand new one right out of space dock. So my morality trumps yours because it's based upon the Federation, which is over 75 years out of contact.
Right. But then later on, she throws that if her basis of morality is what Starfleet says, these are what you do and what you don't do, she then does do away with that, or skirts the edges, or bends the rules and stuff like that later.
In order to save her crew, which is the same exact thing that the other captain
did, but not to the same extent, possibly.
Possibly. I mean,
maybe there's certain episodes where they were. Okay, so here's the point. You take away the military doctrine that is Starfleet. You take that off the table. Say we're too far away. We're out of the jurisdiction. It no longer applies for us, right? You take that off the table. What universal morality do they have? This is a problem with diversity. You have diverse ethics that are in there. Now, we're good as Christians. There's no race, no gender in Christ. We're all this, but we do have a common morality. We do have a common ethic that's with Christians. With that crew, Maquis, Borg, Ocampa, everybody has their own basis of morality. You take Starfleet morality writing off of that, then it just explodes. It goes every which direction.
Yeah, and I think that was an example in this where the captain of the Equinox was willing to, he put the value of his crew above Starfleet's, jurisdiction, morality basis, and said, whatever is good for the crew, that is good. So, and I think that Janeway would have an extremely hard way of arguing that her morality is more moral than his morality, because, well,
yeah, because it's individual morality.
It's individual morality on both aspects.
Even her and Chakotay would have disagreed on several things, right? Yeah.
So Christianity gives us a morality to come from, because we are all looking at Christ, all knowing that we are to,
based on Scripture.
Based upon Scripture, that's the foundation of what we believe is moral and immoral. And no matter how many light years away from Earth we are, that morality is universal.
Because God's always watching anyway.
Yep. Don't matter where you're at.
But okay, so I want to compare one last thing. And this is Christians would have, I'm going to make this claim. Okay, I want you to refute this claim if you can. Christians would navigate a way home more easily than Muslims. Because Islam is rigid in its way of life. It dictates every single thing. Even religion and state are intertwined. A lot of people don't know that when they talk about dealing with Islam, is to say that, oh well, they just separate church and state right off the bat. No, if they're in charge, it's the whole kit and caboodle.
It's a legal system. It's moral system.
Right.
Sharia law is based off of the Sunnah of Muhammad, as well as the teachings of the Quran and the other parts of the Hadith.
Right.
So
it tells you how to do everything: how to wash your hands, how to go to the bathroom, how to eat, every single thing. And because of this, I think being stuck in the Delta Quadrant like this, I think it would be too rigid of a system to be able to deal with the flexibility that's needed. Where you have Christianity, you have basic principles that guide you in your relationship with God, that guides you more than a list of how many books are in the Hadith. Volumes and volumes and volumes.
Too many. Sahih al-Bukhari is 95, if memory serves, 95 different books, 95 different volumes. And then Sahih Muslim, there are equivalent, if not more. So I'm not sure off the top of my head what the exact numbers are. Now, I don't know about that because I think it might be different. Again, if we assume that both of them were able to get to this technological level, which I have a hard time thinking that Islam would be able to, with its past, with technology being not its strong suit in any way, shape, or form. The sun does not set in a muddy pool of water. That's not scientifically true. So, if they were both able to get out there, I think that you would find, depending on the Muslim, because again, it would be individual, if they were very close adherents to how Muhammad lived, Muhammad's example, I think they actually might be able to get back faster than Christians would. In fact, they might have an easier time of it, and they might end up very much richer.
Why is that?
Because they would be busy raiding, pillaging, enslaving the local civilization without any regard for the people themselves. Because that's what Muhammad did. He was a warlord who was a slave trader.
That's true.
In fact, his only moral objection to killing women and children was the fact he wouldn't be able to sell them. Because whenever they actually did kill women and children, he's like, who cares about those polytheistic kids? I mean, that was just a thing. They were with them. They were of them.
Okay, so I have been duly corrected. They might get here a lot faster.
Yeah, Christians would have to actually be concerned with other species and being honest and engaging, where you have the rule of taqiyya, which you could just lie.
So I was wrong about something. I lied. I said that was the last thing. There is one last thing that I had. Where's God in all this? That is the overriding thing with all the Star Trek series and everything else. Where is God? Where is Jesus in their picture of the future? He has been taken out.
They don't have him. Yep.
Yeah. So it's just been sidelined. It's like, well, that was like a nice little part in our history, or nice or bad or whatever. Christianity, it's now pretty much passe. No one ever really talks about it much, unless maybe historical documents or something. But when you do that, if you were to really do that, you would not have this utopia experience of what they were looking for. Just look at our own history with when you take God and Christ out of the picture, it does
not end well.
Goes south fast. Look at communism. It was very much, we've got to get rid of it. Got to get rid of religion. Got to get rid of Christianity. Take it out of the picture. And 200 million deaths later, we have where we are today. It's crumbled. It's never worked. So we have coming up next, and if you like this material, please let us know and share it. But the next tomorrow, we're going to deal with peace offering for Thanksgiving. We're going to take a look at a Hebrew word here, salam, to dig a little bit deeper into what a peace offering was in the Old Testament, and does that relate to our present Thanksgiving that we have today? How relations work with that? In other words, how to have a Thanksgiving dinner without killing your in-laws.
That's not really a good rule of thumb. Thanksgiving doesn't really work too well if it ends in murder.
Yeah, no, not good. Might make a good story, but no, you end up in prison. So, and then Friday, we're going to have a galactic showdown. This is based on viewer choice. We've asked the viewers to take a look at which ones you like, and Battlestar Galactica came in top. And we're going to compare the old and the new Battlestar Galactica, because we're going to look at their theme, going to look at the way that they viewed life and existence and everything, and say why it gets so gritty and dark, and which of these is a better view, and so on and so forth, and pull out the Christian themes for this. So what's that?
The poll time.
Oh, yes, poll time. We have put out a poll to find out which is the best time for live stream for this. Please take a look at that poll and put your input in, because, hey, we'll adjust according to what viewer response is on this. If most people have a particular time that we're doing, we'll take a look at that. So one person, bless his heart, from Finland said, finish evening time.
Yeah,
so,
no.
I don't know if that's going to work for us. I would love to be able to be that flexible, but I don't know if that's going to happen. But anyway,
this would be an evening show or afternoon show.
Yeah, and still, we work, so believe it or not, and we have to engage our time around work schedules, so we have to do that as well. Anything else we should cover?
Nope. I think that's about it.
Okay. Well, thank you for your time, and we'll see you tomorrow for a Thanksgiving special, and then the showdown of the Galacticas the day after.